So basically, how the project came about was I had planned a concert around this holiday known as Sweetest Day, which is the middle of October, and I wanted something that was ubiquitously famous and it would be appealing on many levels. And the fact that I knew, of course, about the sonnets that Vivaldi had written, it is assumed that he wrote them, although he doesn't say that he wrote them, but no one else is claiming to have written them. So the scholarship is that he wrote them. And they are really beautiful, actually. And so it seemed like a really great package of music, and especially such a famous piece such as the Four Seasons, with the sonnets. So I engaged Steve Robinson of WFMT, who has this wonderful, rich voice, and so that was the plan. So and it was with Amelia Piscitelli, who's one of my top student, basically. Although she plays as well as any professional. In fact, she's one of the top violinists, actually, I would say, in the U.S. at the moment. But my wife, I had been talking with my family and my wife about how interesting all these seasonal elements are that Vivaldi has specifically written into the score. Obviously, you start off with the birds, there's murmuring streams, there's thunder, there's lightning, there's a barking dog played by the viola. And then you have even, an armchair in the middle movement of winter situation where there's people outside are being drenched and you hear raindrops. And so there are so many wonderful, rich elements that Vivaldi depicts. So my wife said to me, this is the day of the concert, why don't you play, you've been speaking about all these elements, why don't you play a few of these excerpts for the audience this evening and see how they like it. So I thought that's a great idea. So I whipped up an excerpt sheet for the orchestra, and we did the concert. And I introduced all of the most relevant excerpts. And I tell you, the response was simply overwhelming. And after the concert, I was almost mobbed with people telling me how wonderful it was to simply know more about the piece of music. This famous piece that they, perhaps had heard in a restaurant or an elevator or on an advertisement or whatever, and here it is presented for them, and they can truly get the details of everything that Vivaldi is depicting in the score. And so I was really thrilled with this overwhelming response. And so I thought, well, we need to put this on a recording and create an educational edition that really brings this piece to life in a new way and gives a new experience, and especially for children, for families. You can use this kind of as a resource in the classroom. And then, of course, once you've gotten to know the piece and all those elements and excerpts and so forth, then, of course, on the disc 2, it's just the music. So and it makes a nice gift as well. So that was basically the genesis of the project.
Well, it's an educational disc, as you say, but it's also highly entertaining to listen to not only the poems but also the narrative elements that Steve Robinson does on the disc. I love the way he begins talking about just the sound of the composer's name, Vivaldi.
Yes.
Vital, vivacious, all those other V words.
Yes, that was Steve's input there, and that was really a great thing to collaborate with him, because he had some excellent insights and additions to the basic script that I had written there. But yes, I thought it was important that we give the listener a little bit of the historical background into Vivaldi, his work at the Pietà in Venice. Interesting little anecdotes, such as the fact that it was immodest for the girls to be seen, so they had to play behind an iron grill in these concerts and that sort of thing. And so, yes, he gives that historical spiel, and then, of course, we move through each movement in each season, illustrating each excerpt, so that you really do hear what it is that he's in a sort of a more isolated fashion as to what the listener should glom onto, if you will, so that when they hear the whole thing unfold before them, they really understand what they're listening to. But I will say this, that I was quite astonished to find that this was the first recording that had ever been made that had included this educational component. So I think that's an interesting point, and I was actually surprised, though, because, I mean, to me it was sort of an obvious one, as you mentioned before, a bit like Benjamin Britten, the Guide to the Orchestra, Peter and the Wolf, Baba the Elephant, and the Vivaldi does have this story-like elements to it. So anyway, it's the first one of its kind to be done out of 600 recordings there are of the Vivaldi Four Seasons. So there it is.
You mentioned briefly, the girls at La Pietà who performed this piece, who Vivaldi basically wrote it for them. It's a nice tie-in, the fact that you have such a young female violinist headlining these concertos. Can you talk a little bit about, first of all, we should tell people that don't know the story of La Pietà, or the fact that Vivaldi wrote this for young girls. And then talk a little bit about your violinist.
Absolutely. I would be happy to do that. So, yes, first of all, as far as Vivaldi and his work with the Pietà, an orphanage for abandoned girls, and he was charged with teaching them music. And, of course, he, as a composer and a fantastic violinist himself, he was able to write concerti for these young girls. And you can see, I'm a teacher, a violin teacher, and I've been teaching for 30 years, and so I know many of the concerti of Vivaldi, some of the ones before he wrote the Four Seasons. And you can tell that he's clearly customized the way he composes for the younger violinist. But at the same time, it's all continuously great music. And so you wouldn't say, this piece is clearly for a kid. You just don't say that when you hear it. And there are many professional recordings of all of those younger concerti that he made. So and he would give concerts in the St. Mark's Square, Venice, in the church there, and they became very famous. And he had people from all over Europe coming to listen to these concerts. So yes, when as far as Amelia is concerned. So in my capacity as a teacher, I was invited to give a master class at a string camp. Let me see. Let's see. Amelia was 13 at the time, so 4 or 5 years ago. And I gave the master class, and she was one of the students performing, and she was 13 years old, and she played her Praeludium in Allegro and so forth, and she played it quite well. But there were definitely problems with technique and so forth, and I was working with her. But there were elements in the performance where she was just brilliant. I mean, all of a sudden, you could just see this flash of brilliance in the sound and the way she played. And I thought, wow, there's something really special going on here. And it's kind of like a diamond in the rough. So I said to her mother afterwards, I said, well, I'd like to invite her. I think she's special. I'd like to invite her to study with me privately. And so she said, fine. And so I took her back to square one and, gave her the basic exercises, and we did reconstruction work. But I have to say that I have never seen a student have such a trajectory of progress, exponential progress before my very eyes. And I've been teaching for 30 years. And so 4.5 years later, she was playing at a world-class level, and it was just an astonishing thing to witness that. And so she seemed like the perfect choice. She's half Italian. She has that joie de vivre in the way she plays, the attack with the bow against the string, and her vibrato. And although, of course, in this we're actually doing a hip style, historically informed performance, and we're not really using vibrato, but still, I mean, just the panache with which she plays was just palpable. So, yeah, perfect choice, and I'm sure Vivaldi would have had some similar kids.
Well, you can definitely hear the sense of youth and vitality. I mean, there's another one of those V words.
That's right.
In her performance.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the Camerata Chicago?
Sure.
I know that part of your mission is to work with the next generation of musicians, but also to inspire people to come to these concerts. Can you tell us, how you go about that sort of thing?
Well, certainly when I first started the orchestra, that was one of the components. Was I had colleagues that I was working with, the cellist, for example, David Cunliffe, a cellist he's now actually the cellist in the Lincoln piano trio.
Mm-hmm.
And we had access at that time to other students. This is back in 2003, where we had 2 or 3 superb musicians, a bit like Amelia, and we incorporated them into the group. This is, again, back in the beginning in 2003, and we did pieces, string orchestra pieces like Holberg Suite by Grieg and Handel Concerti Grossi and that sort of thing. And it expanded over the last 16 years into more of a chamber orchestra where we include winds, Mozart symphonies, 2 oboes, 2 horns, that kind of thing. And then we actually took the orchestra on tour in 2013 for our 10th anniversary, which is a full chamber orchestra. We did Beethoven's 7th Symphony. But as far as the inclusion of the young people and the mission thereof, one of the components that we added within the last 2 or 3 years was to have a youth orchestra. We have a senior academy and a junior academy. So the junior academy, the average age is about 10 or 11, middle school. And then Amelia Piscitelli is the concertmaster of the Senior Academy. So she provides a lot of inspiration there. And then just one of the components that I like to include when we do a concert is I speak to the audience in advance. So the orchestra's sitting there on the stage and we're about to play, but I give 3 to 5, 6 minutes on the piece of music they're about to hear. And they love to be educated. They love to know about the music and some of the history anecdotes and try to make it a little bit amusing. And they always say afterwards how educational this is and how glad they are that they brought their children. So we give free tickets to the children if they come with a paying adult, which really helps. In some cases, we have very large families, with 7, 8 kids, and otherwise they wouldn't be able to afford it. So that's very much part of our mission.
How do you envision people using this CD? Do you, sort of think of the family sitting around the CD player and listening to it and enjoying it that way?
That certainly is one realm, yes. And I also see that it could easily be used by a music classroom teacher. You have the booklet, which has all everything that you hear spoken by Steve Robinson is also written out in the booklet, so it can be followed along. And it could easily be used in a classroom setting to illustrate and to learn about the Baroque period and the 4 seasons and how nature and music can intertwine to create a piece of music that depicts so well. And also just driving along in your car. You can just put the CD, assuming that you have a car these days that actually has a CD player.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, in every realm, I think that it's relevant, and it's actually the first recording ever made, which includes the elements, the educational components of what we're doing here.
Well, I can tell you as somebody who's played the 4 seasons so many times on the radio, I certainly enjoyed sitting back and listening to the narration and little tidbits that were included on that recording.
Thank you. I'm very glad that you did.
Drostan Hall is music director for Camerata Chicago. And if we want to catch up with you online, is there a website we can go to?
Yes, thank you for asking. Yes, cameratachicago.org. And that is where you can also go to the online store and purchase your copy of the 4 seasons. It's available as a hard copy. We send that to you free shipping. And, of course, it opens up into a nice gift pack, digipack kind of situation with 2 discs. First disc has the educational components. The second disc is just the music. And so also it's available as a download platform too. So yes, and you can see everything else that we're doing in terms of concert projects. So and there's YouTubes and recordings and videos that you can see of the orchestra too.
Well, thanks for your time today, and thank you for joining us here on FM 91. Best of luck with the recording. I've enjoyed it very much.
Well, thank you, Brad. Really great to chat with you.